Hey everyone, welcome back to the Built for the Future podcast. I'm your host Josh Rainbow, and today's guest is Wish Bakshi, founder and AI engineer at AQ Energy, where he specializes in meshing next level technologies with the energy space to deliver real value to real companies. Thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. I hope you enjoy, and hit a like and subscribe down below. Welcome back to the Built for the Future podcast, brought to you by Future Summit Media. I am here with today's guest, Wish Bakshi, founder and AI systems engineer at AQ Energy. Wish, pleasure to have you on today.
Thanks for having me, man. You do some cool shit, so you're knocking it out of the park. So I'm in the shadow of greatness right now.
So. You're too kind. You're too kind. Can you tell I paid him to say that?
No.
Wish, people want to know who you are. You're like this cool, mysterious figure who just like lurks in the darkness in our community, but knows everyone and knows everything. Tell us a little bit more about you.
I'm an AI engineer.
What does that even mean?
The analogy I would give you is there's way smarter people than me out of Cornell, Berkeley, etc. They get to build the Lamborghinis and Ferraris. There's a data scientist or the quants. I'm the idiot that gets to test drive them and tell them if they built it up to spec or not. So I get to do some cool stuff. Luckily, I spend half my time in States and half in Calgary. A little bit in Palo Alto too now. And my job is, in three sectors. One is, the ones and zeros, which is software, like writing code and building AI systems. But that's more like, how should I explain this? It's like, you're not working in the tangibles. When you write code, it's like you're not touching and feeling it, right? Mm-hmm. But that's where the energy component comes in, because I focus just in energy, entire value chain. So think, I work on power plants, right? So gas power plants. I work on AI data centers right now. I'm working on 2 in States right now. And then I work on LNG facilities. And then I'm also working on midstream assets, which is the pipelines that transport the gas and the crude. And my job over there is really just to kind of say, the executives and the board members kind of bring me in and they say, listen, show us the art of the possible. What can be done with AI? What cannot be done with AI? Because they're really tired of spending like millions of dollars, right? Like with an army of consultants kind of coming in, and then 2 years go by and it's just like a big strategy session and road mapping, and then they can't execute, right? So I'm more on being the bridge between, the IT, the OT, the commercial, trading, and then showing them how to bring it all together in a value chain and then actually build a tangible product that returns an ROI just around the AI.
So super smart is what you're saying.
No, just lucky.
Lucky.
Right place, right time.
Right place, right time. Tell us a little bit more about like your background, like what led to this point. Obviously, you've got a number of eclectic skill sets that when put together, like incredibly powerful, especially in today's day and age. I think we've all been blessed, and by all, I mean people who are in this field, with the knowledge that we've collected. I have a similar but different story. Anyways, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you.
We can talk about you.
No. Everybody wants to know about you. They know too much about me. I like to give the platform. So, looking at that background, right, you're talking about some deep economic prowess, understanding statistics, advanced mathematics, computer science, and being able to channel that into a business outcome. I think one of the things that our company focuses on is looking to drive value for our partners, with the end goal of making them more money, right, and promoting thought leadership. But you're talking about these consultancies that struggle with that, and I think for you it's almost like this is normal.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But from the opposite side, as someone who's like, I'm not saying modeled my whole career after you, we're different skill sets, but learned a lot in the terms of execution and delivering value with very little oversight is a huge skill set in demand nowadays with technology. Yep. Tell us a little bit more about how you got there.
I mean, a lot of it was with luck. So my background, I have 4 degrees. I have a computer science degree. I have a econometrics degree, which is a combination of economics and statistics. And I also have a master's in AI from Queens. I also teach at University of Calgary in AI, and I also teach on an ad hoc basis at Queen's University. But a lot of it just came from, I'll be honest with you. If people want to follow this world, the 9 to 5, approach does not work. You go in at 9, you check out at 5. when you kind of commit to a project, especially a physical asset, which is completely different, right? Like when you talk about AI data centers, for example, or you talk about LNG facilities, they're moving millions of dollars of inventory, or AI data centers have infrastructure worth 10 to 20 billion dollars that are going to be coming the next generation ones. You can't just build a software and say, oh, it just magically works. What you do in that code, physically impacts the physical infrastructure worth, if not billions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so, I was very lucky because when I joined IPP, an independent power producer, I kind of came in almost 7 years ago. And I was lucky because the CIO at that point kind of said, listen, you don't belong in my team. I'll pay your salary. Just go find work. And so he opened a lot of doors for me. And then the ELT, the executive leadership team, some SVPs and VPs, they were like, hey, do you want to work on a power plant? I'm like, yep. So what was amazing about us 7 years ago or 8 years ago, there was no such thing as, AI, you talk about it, the people in Calgary especially would say robots, right? But I got to build it greenfield. So how do I connect to that system? How do I get data out of it? How do I kind of actually, so I got to build everything from scratch. Mm-hmm. Again, luck, right? Then they said, hey, do you want to work on wind turbines, right? So then I went and did wind turbines. And then I got pulled into trading, commodities trading. Again, luck. There's a very good leader in that team, in that company, who said, do you want to do AI? And, we don't know if it works or not, but come. So then I went there and sat. It's called the pit, So I sat with all the traders, and they taught me everything about power and gas trading. So people think, the Wolf of Wall Street and equities and stuff. This is a different world, right? Like your commodity traders are extremely hard to find, especially in power and gas, because it's very volatile. So then I built those AI systems for them. And then I kind of started my own shop. Now I work down in States for commodities trading for hedge funds and stuff like that, building sophisticated AI systems for them. And then I came back, I'm 50% here where I'm working on the physical assets. That's kind of like the journey, but again, it's all executive sponsorship, right? The hard part is, increasing your luck surface area, so increasing your hit rate, but then you have to deliver, because unlike some of the other big shops, when you are a one-man show, brand is everything, right? So you cannot fail, right? That's kind of like what I say when I was originally saying about 9 to 5. There is no 9 to 5 for me. You get up, you work, you go to sleep, and you work, and you find some time between.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about opening up your own shop in that transition? What was that like for you?
I didn't plan it. It was luck, It was just two executive members came to me and they said, hey, listen, you have a proven track record. Do you want to come? We sit on a bunch of boards for some of these large enterprises. We'll open the doors for you, and then you go deliver, because we're tired of paying, these large shops to kind of build some cool stuff. So I didn't plan it. I literally started up, and I was just I don't know where it goes. And then the president of the board kind of, she took me under her wing, and then she took me to really, really cool shops where I've been delivering and building stuff. Don't have a lot of founder friends, etc. So kind of figuring it out on the go. Got great mentors. And then they say, the way the model works is, they come in, I talk to the CEO. The CEO says, I'm trying to do AI. I kind of go well, that's not a good idea, but here's 5 ideas that you can do, and here's the run rate. And then they kind of go from there, and then they tell me, okay, I want you to focus on the commercial side, building AI systems, or I want you to focus on the physical asset, which is physical plants, etc. And then I say, okay, physical is going to take this time, commercial is going to take this time. And then I kind of go in, and the reason why they love this model is because I train their people, right? I don't come with an army of my own consultants, whatever, that they can never get rid of. I actually train them how to build AI systems, how to get the data out, how to build the system, and then hold the IP. Because that's one key differentiating factor about AI, of the software, is R&D. So you don't ever want to outsource that. You want to keep it in-house, right? And this is why they love the model, is because once I train their people, I parachute out and into a different organization.
First of all, incredibly cool.
Luck. Thank you, but luck.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think luck is where preparation meets execution. And then you get a couple opportunities. I don't know. Some smart people say that. I'm not the best with quotes, but I love quotes. I live and die by quotes. Obviously you have these incredible leaders that put you in these positions to be able to showcase your skills. But once you built that name for yourself, you built that company, what's it like? Because, in Calgary, with one of the last events that was kind of here, the largest data and AI conference in Canada, you had a sold out crowd. A lot of people were wanting to listen to you, and I don't even think the next biggest room was filled halfway. It was like
I did not know that.
It was like standing room only in there. So talk about your brand, talk about building that. Like, what are some things that you look to do to set yourself apart from others? Because obviously you have a very particular skill set that not a lot of people have, but like, how do you showcase that?
I mean, those are two different questions. First of all, I actually don't plan to think about my brand. The only thing that matters in this space, the only thing is delivery, right? You deliver when you have access to high net worth ELT executive leadership and the board. You have untethered access to work that's going to come. You just got to deliver, right? Now, in terms of like kind of showcasing the technology, you have to be very careful, because now you're popping the hood and showcasing to the world what other organizations are doing. This goes back to the original conversation we had, which is the IP. You have to be very careful. But what you can do is you can mask it enough for people to understand what was done, but not how, right? Like, you don't share the how. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to do in Calgary is what I've at least seen is that US is about anywhere from 5 to 8 years ahead of us, right? In terms of AI implementations in energy and enterprise. And how do we kind of bring that knowledge back to Calgary? Because, energy AI is now a big thing in Calgary. Like, everybody wants to do it. They just don't know how to do it. And I'm not talking about Gen AI chatbots. I'm talking tangible ROI, P&L, attached to it, or even attached to your EBITDA targets, right? And so that's what I want to bring back is say, listen, if you want to train your people and you want to keep the IP in-house, here's what you do, right? And then when you deliver, brand, work, everything takes care of itself.
The future doesn't belong to chance or luck or fear. It belongs to the ones who build. At Future Summit 2025, builders from the front lines of AI and quantum, from data center infrastructure to energy evolution, will gather in Calgary to shape what's next. Alongside breakthroughs in health tech, longevity, and fintech and the industries they power, smart cities, aerospace, and beyond. Through world-class keynotes, strategic panels, and curated sessions, we'll cut through the noise and spark real-world collisions between vision and action. This is where leaders make decisions that define the next decade. The future belongs to those who build it, so build it with us. Future Summit 2025, this November in Calgary. Tickets available now at futuresummit.ai.
Are you able to give us a glimpse into, like, if someone was doing XYZ type of project, like they need to talk to you, and this is why? Like, maybe tying into that a misunderstanding that people have about the work in your industry. Obviously, there's proof of concepts, which, low barrier to entry in terms of that.
Yeah.
But you work at scale. So tell us a little bit about that and those types of projects and why they need you.
So the hard part is kind of telling people. So here's a very tangible way. A lot of these enterprises do these things called steer codes, right? And then when they do the steer codes and steer committees, what happens is the directors and the VPs and higher ups, and it's not their fault. They don't know how AI works. They come up with these use cases, right? They say, look, like if we saw predictive maintenance for this, or a compressor station, or actuator, or anything like that, or even trading, we're going to hit our margins, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is that, you should be looking at your data first, right? So what happens is that the steer code kind of goes, and then they give the marching orders to all the folks below them. And then what happens is that 6 to 8 months go by and people go like, shit, like we don't have the data. So now you just wasted a year, right? So my job is to basically kind of go in and say, listen, before you come up with any of these use cases, whatever, let's pop the hood. Let's see what you actually have. And then let's look what problems we can solution, right? But knowing which those use cases are from looking at the data, that's an art. And you have had to done it enough times to know how to do it and what is right. Otherwise, you're going back into the R&D bucket. And R&D is a problematic area because, when you kind of latch on to a use case and you can't deliver, the most common problem that I've seen with enterprises is that they don't cut the umbilical cord. They just keep going at it, right? In AI, if you have a thesis and the data does not allow you to support that thesis or that use case, you have to be able to cut the umbilical cord and move on. And that's the thing that nobody does. They budgeted for 2 years. when you know in the first 3 or 4 months that project was dead in the water. That's kind of like the areas that I kind of go in to say, don't get into this situation, focus on something else, and here's a framework. And then in that framework, you have this thing called a revolving door policy. The revolving door policy is take from Amazon basically, is to enable your superstars to kind of go in and say, listen, I am allowed to backtrack, right? So in AI, there's something called EDA, exploratory data analysis. So you pop the hood, you massage the data, right? And then you figure out that my original use case is garbage, but I just came up with 4 other use cases, right? A lot of these organizations don't actually consider those other 4 use cases. They still want that one to be solved. And what happens is that they sink a whole bunch of capital into a project that was dead in the water. So I kind of like tell them, okay, when you want to do AI, you have to have this revolving door policy to have your superstars to be able to pivot, right? Because you just need one home run. It's like a VC, right? Invest in 10 companies, you just need one to go hit that unicorn status. Same concept applies to AI.
And what's one assumption that you find a lot of, maybe industry professionals or ETLs, I believe as you call it.
ELT, yeah.
ELT make about the work that you're in, like the AI systems engineering.
Yeah.
And, especially as we look at, this new enterprise that's popping up, everybody's super excited with data centers. Like, what's one assumption that people, make and ultimately get wrong?
I think it's about, having a very, very pointed strategy on how to manage those use cases, right? Like, it's such a different mind. It's like, okay, you put a statement of work for a project that you do or a standard software. Software, for example, perfect example. Let's just say you're building an app. At the end of the day, you are going to get an Apple app, okay? It might be a shitty app, but With AI, there's no certainty, right? Like, you will come up with this and you will be like, you know what? I can't even build a darn thing because it's that hard, right? I call it like the 100x ideas. The other ones that you want to go are the smaller ones, right? Like the low-hanging fruit that's in the organization. What that does, and this is what I always coach all the board members who have sadly been coached by, like, I'm not going to say the names, but like, some of the bigger shops, is to say, let's just come in and evaluate these in the steer codes and knowledge and all this. All they're doing is knowledge extraction so that they can go to your competitor next, right? What I say is, like, listen, go with the simplest thing. You have unicorns, superstars in your organization. They already know what they want to do. Find those folks, enable them, and then go for those run rates, right? I think that's the biggest misconception that I have is, like, people don't treat AI with R&D idea. They just think it will solve all their problems, and it's not going to.
So clearly it's not this like nebulous black box that can give you all the results you want.
Yeah.
How do companies, or how should board members be thinking nowadays? What are things that they should be taking from like a technological standpoint and looking to adopt to change? Obviously, you can remove the steer codes, whatnot. But is there a mental framework that they should
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful question. Thinking about it in the framework of A plus and B plus, okay? A plus are the moonshot ideas, the 100x ideas, right? You sit down and you say, listen, if we hit that, we're going to save X million dollars, right? The B plus are the ones that I talk about, which are the normal use cases. You don't need any deep neural networks. You don't need cutting edge machine learning, but you do that on a compounding basis enough, it adds to the EBITDA, right? And a very, very good example is that there's a whole bunch of equipment, like, as an example, like compressor stations, for example, that are running. If you have 10 of those in a midstream asset, a pipeline, and they're like, let's just say, they're not the electrical ones, they're the gas ones, they're about anywhere from like 2 to 5 megawatts. They burn about $100 million worth of fuel just to run every year on one asset. Think about that. Now, if you optimize that by a percentage, 2% using AI, just think about the dollar amount attached to that,
saving.
right? And so that does a payback. It's not fancy, it's not cutting edge, but if you're able to optimize something like that, you're laughing to the bank. And what it does is, like, it allows, in the investor relations and the quarterlies and the annuals, it actually allows you to share that, hey, we are doing some advanced analytics that doesn't take 2 years to do. Right. This was able to be done in 8 months.
Really, it's quick wins for success.
Yep.
Building up almost a hype train internally.
Yep.
And allowing the figureheads, so to speak, whether they're, C-suite executives, to be able to say, hey, we've had these many successes, go to their shareholders and be like, we should invest now $5 million because we saved $5 million.
Yep.
And look at, giving Wish that A+ capability concept. Outside of that realm, what do you do? Like, I hear you have this blog. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, my LinkedIn microblogs. That's a nice plug you just gave me over there. Appreciate it, Josh. This is what I love about you. You give everybody a fair shot. I just started what happened was, the story behind that is pretty cool. I was sitting in New York where there's two boards that sponsor me. So the second board that I was with the Johnson, he kind of watched me. So his daughter was there. His daughter was there, and his granddaughter was there, and the granddaughter was kind of like struggling with a math problem or something like that. So I'm at their house, and then I kind of sat down on the floor and I just kind of started explaining it to her. And then 5 or 7 minutes later, his daughter, she was kind of looking, and she's like, we've tried to teach her that puzzle for about 2 weeks, and you kind of explained it to her in 7 minutes. And she was like, have you ever thought about putting your thoughts out there in a blog? And I was like, no. She's like, you should, because you're good at explaining things. So then I was sitting at home and I was kind of bored. I was not in the right state of mind after a long night, the previous night. And I said, you know what, I'll write a microblog on LinkedIn and see how it goes. And that became a trend. And then it got picked up by Bloomberg. It got picked up by Reuters, as in folks kind of citing some of the stuff that I'd done, some calculations. And then it just kind of went from there, which is kind of telling people the unfiltered story about AI data centers, LNG facilities. These are there's so many of them coming up, especially in the US, and Canada has a big one coming up, LNG Canada, $35 billion project. And then I started talking about power plants, and then I started talking about the entire value chain. And then essentially what happened was, I went from the ones and zeros world to the electrons, which was the powers, and then I went to the molecule. So you can see in the value chain of energy how it kept going up and up. And so then I started tying the story all together to say, listen, when something happens up here to an oil and gas company, this is what happens in the midstream, and then this is what happens to a power plant, and then this is what happens to an AI data center, right? And then that got more and more traction. So, that's kind of where it came from, was dumping my entire thoughts into a microblog to let the people know, here's the entire picture of how the whole energy space is changing.
Blown away. One, I like how you, shameless plug, like myself, I don't even want to say get intimate, but build those cool relationships with the people you work with, that allow you to have those kinds of very nuanced situations where multiple worlds collide, teaching their granddaughter math.
Yeah,
that's incredibly cool, and I'm sure builds a lot to your relationship from an empathetic point of view of seeing you outside of this just amazing high performer. Okay, this guy's also a person too.
Yeah, there's no robot underneath me, if that's what you're getting into.
No,
yeah.
I know. You're full Wish.
Yeah, this is Wish.
Yeah. So let's unpack Wish here for a second.
Sure.
We've talked about really, I think, the start of your career, the middle, if we're breaking it up into chapters, but now we're at this weird inflection point where you're able to utilize these skill sets that you've developed for this new digital economy that also is tied to physical assets, which you have a lot of experience with.
Yeah.
But then it's also highly capitalized in certain areas and isn't in other ones. So you're dealing with all these different constraints, which is, if you're a nerd who loves solving crazy problems, these are some of the best.
Yep.
Tell us more about that. And what I'm getting at specifically is AI data centers.
So, gosh, where do I start? So, just to guys give you, there was a previous speaker who was on this podcast, Carson, who really hit it out of the park on a lot of the critical, the story behind the power and the AI data center story. But just to kind of baseline ourselves, let's just say in the US in the next 5 years, right, 30 gigawatts of new AI data centers are coming. When you say gigawatts, people have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
Think about it that's 30 new 1 gigawatt nuclear reactors. Just think about that, right? 30 nuclear reactors worth of power generation. Now, when was the last time you heard that a nuclear power plant was built in this country or in the US, right? There was a new one that was just built that took 15 years, and it was, I think, $18 billion over budget. The one in Georgia, Votel. And so that's how much power, and that's a baseline that I'm giving you, right? And the hard part about these AI data centers is you cannot predict user behavior, okay? So the two AI data centers that I'm working on, we do something called load forecasting. So we're trying to figure out, what is the behavior of these AI data centers. Best analogy I can give is today in the data centers, the ones that we have, they're 15 kilowatts, 15 to 30 kilowatts per rack. The way I would explain is like, when you have a PowerPoint and Excel spreadsheets, when you click autosave, what happens in the back end is that generally speaking, 3 copies of that are stored in a data center. Now these CSV files are not very big, 1 megabyte or something like that, maybe 20 or something like that, but this is nothing. 3 of those copies are made, but what the data centers do is they don't make 3 copies at the same time. They make 1 copy and then they do something called, it's called peak shaving, demand response, whatever. They will schedule their data center to say at night at 9 o'clock when power prices are really low, take that and make those 2 copies in 2 other data centers. So that way, if my one data center goes down, you don't lose your files. They are stored in 2 other parts of the world. With AI data centers that have never existed before at this scale, no such thing exists. I don't know when you're about to get up in the morning and start hitting ChatGPT. You can't predict user behavior. When a new model comes out, you can see ChatGPT is down for the first 24 hours. That's the exact problem that they're running into because you cannot predict user behavior. The second one, I'm talking about inference. So inference is when you start talking to it. So it's predicting the next token. Token means a word. Now, when you train a model, that's a whole different beast because Meta will come out, they'll train the Llama model. And they'll say, okay, today I'm going to train my model and we don't know when we're going to be done training. What happens is, the best analogy that I can give is, in a car, you have to shift gears, right? To get from 0 to 100. What happens to a Tesla when you press on the pedal?
Just 1 gear.
And it goes 3 seconds and you hit that 100. That's what these AI data centers are. So when you start training, the clusters start warming up, and then the GPU starts spinning up, and then all of them start ramming up, and they start training. I have no idea as an AI engineer when my training will be done. So I don't know if it's going to take 7 days or 7 months or 3 months. So with AI data centers, the problem is you cannot predict user behavior on the application side, on the inference side, and you cannot predict when I'm going to train my model, right? The third problem that you have with the NVIDIA GPUs is that they have a very high failure rate. So when NVIDIA trained the last model, not the one that just came out, the one before that, the 400 and some billion parameter model, they had a 30% failure rate of NVIDIA GPUs. Most people don't know that. So imagine that you buy $1 billion inventory or a $10 billion NVIDIA chips, 30% of them are failing. Now, when I went to the AI data centers to configure these NVIDIA chips to see how they work, what I learned was when they fail, you have to bring an AI architect and pause the training and try to figure out which GPU is the one that's failing and reconfigure it. Now imagine that you buy a $10 billion inventory and you have a downtime of 2 to 3 days. All the GPUs are kind of in pause. Not all of them. You have ways of kind of checkpointing it and moving it around, but that's kind of the gist of the story. Then the fifth problem that you have, and I'm giving you problems because this is what you asked for. The fifth problem is these new racks that are coming out. I was talking about 15 kilowatts, The GB300s that are coming out right now, they went from 50 kilowatts per rack to 130 kilowatts. Now, that's a significant jump in 2 years. The problem is the Rubin NVIDIA chips that are coming out end of next year, they are 600 kilowatts, right? So they're almost like 5.5 times. Now, the problem is that there are not any AI data centers that can handle that from a substation standpoint, from a transformer standpoint. Bus bars don't exist. The entire electrical infrastructure has not been invented yet. So we have to figure that part out. Now, the other part that people have to figure out with the AI data centers is those GPUs are old within 2 years. Now, imagine spending $10 to $30 billion on NVIDIA chips and then finding out that after 2 years, those chips are old. The newer ones that come out then will require the entire AI data center to be renovated. The cap cycle of these infrastructures is something that people are kind of like not figuring it out yet. They will have to, but this is not for the faint-hearted.
So obviously there's a massive barrier to entry, not just from a standpoint of being able to capitalize these projects, but to be able to operate them efficiently. Is there, and this is something that I hear being asked a lot, is there a secondary market for these chips over those 2 year landscape? Like, would there ever be We have the hyperscalers, the neo clouds. Would there ever be a third tier?
Well,
company?
Cohere is one of those, right? And
Okay.
so there are some coming out. There is definitely going to be a secondary market. The problem that we are going to have to figure out was the application side of it, right? So today, when you see ChatGPT and you see DeepSeek and you see Claude, etc., there's two kinds of models. One are just for basic tasks, and the second one are called reasoning models. Reasoning models take a lot of GPU power, and you can see it when you query with it. It starts kind of assigning it. It shows this chain of thought and how it's thinking. And that is basically running the GPU even longer than it needs to, the whole the clusters. And so that's probably where the tertiary market, kind of the secondary markets kind of provide value, is to say, listen, I don't need the Rubins for that. Maybe the H100s will do the job for that from the inference side. And maybe that'll suffice. Now, even if you do that, power still becomes the bottleneck, because you not only need power for the newer data centers, but now because you have a secondary market to serve it, you still need the old power gen. So you're always playing catch up to get power gen ramped up to make sure that the old data centers and the newer ones are both being able to function.
Is there a use case in looking at the Colossus example that Elon's team did?
Yeah.
Obviously, they did something that no one ever thought was
Yep.
capable. The Metas, the Googles, Microsoft, they all tried it, they all failed. Is the battery technology the key to it? Where they're putting in
It's
those
part of
massive
it.
tile sites?
It's not the solution. It is part of it. What you do is you basically take gas, diesel, simple cycle, batteries. You got to take it all. The reason why he was able to do it is actually none of that. It's because he's a behind the fence private company. Means he has no ESG targets. So because he's private, he doesn't have to worry about carbon footprint or any of that stuff. And so he took it and he went to a place that also does not care about, the carbon as much. And he put it up there, Memphis. And then he basically tapped into some old factories that were there, plugged into their gas system and started kind of like running through it. Then he brought in VoltaGrid, which is, the proprietary power. And then they also brought in, Tesla battery packs, right? You got to keep in mind though, that data center that he has, it's not even 200 megawatts. We're planning on building a gigawatt. That's 5 times bigger. So batteries, sure, they will solve the problem as in temporarily as a Band-Aid fix. But you know what the problem with batteries is? C rates, cycle rate. Meaning that your batteries can only cycle so many times before they need to be charged. Those AI data centers run 7 days to 7 months straight. So you have to figure out your optimization strategy to figure out when are you going to charge those batteries and when are you going to discharge them while the AI model is training or doing inference, right? It's an engineering feat, and he's figured it out how to do it, because if you're grid connected, you can charge those batteries at night when the power prices are really cheap, and then you discharge them. But that has a third problem, which is not that he cares, but if you are, a commercial player who owns those batteries, because he can do it with Tesla battery packs because he has access to them, right? But the more you use these batteries, the faster they degrade. Do you see the problem now? Yeah. It's like, batteries depreciate much faster. Generally speaking, so, Carson was talking about this, the batteries in ERCOT, Texas, right? They cannibalize the market so well that, there's something called the duck curve. The duck curve is the solar, when sun shines, power prices are really cheap. So thermal and fossil fuel power plants, they don't produce, they're out of merit, they're not making any money. But when the sun goes down, fossil fuel power plants, let's just combined cycle power plants, start ramping up, and that's when they make money. And you would see like this really, steep duck curve, and it just decimates the market. And then batteries came in and they kind of like normalized that curve to say, but the reason why they were able to do that is because the C rate, the charge rate and the discharge rates, right? And then year over year, from last year to this year, the batteries, they have made 60% less revenue because they literally put batteries everywhere. So they cannibalize the market. So going back to your original question, yeah, batteries are part of the solution. And the best part about batteries is that it doesn't take you 5 or 7 years to put them on ground. It's pretty freaking fast. And not as capital intensive as power plants. But yeah, like you need everything. You need everything that can generate electrons.
So let's take a step back here, because we've covered 2 crazy topics, and obviously these are very well connected when you look at the application layer of technology in a specific industry vertical. Are there any other industry verticals? Obviously, you being an energy specialist, maybe you have a different point of view, but are there any other industry verticals that are, slim pickings for like AI? Like, is there anything popping out? Like, obviously, energy is a really critical industry for the humankind in the world to go around. But is there anything else that you're hearing, like boots on the ground, especially talking with a lot of these other AI experts, different industries that are, looking to be taken by storm?
Everybody is. Everybody wants to use AI in some capacity or the other, and the problem is finding AI talent. That's the bottleneck, right? Like even all the infrastructure that we talk, I think in 5 to 7 years we would have solved it. Nuclear will come in, etc. But you talk about finance, you talk about healthcare, you talk about pharmacology, like all of them. Everybody wants to disrupt it with AI. The problem is there's not enough talent to go around, right? It's good, especially good talent, and because of that, disruption has been very slow. Because I mean, the best way I can say is like, this is the analogy that I give people. Let's just say that you have 2 kids, and those 2 kids watch a bunch of YouTube videos on how to make a car. They make a car in the garage, etc. Would you put your grandma in that car?
Probably not.
Yeah. And what's happening is, the reason I'm giving you that analogy is like a lot of people are taking these online courses, like 1 or 2 online courses, or these bootstrapped 1-year AI courses, and basically going and trying to get jobs. The problem is that the fundamentals are not there. So, those projects that think that they have the right AI talent is just falling flat, right? And so what I would say, if as a Canadian, what I've seen is like the AI talent is just leaving the country in hordes, like hordes. And it's just because the compensation structure in the US is 5 times better. They reward exceptionalism, even contrary to what the news says. So if you really, really want to change that and deliver in any stream, we got to keep that AI talent. And most of them are like CS majors, STEM focus majors, math, stats, etc. But they're all leaving. So we got to figure out a way to keep them here.
Talking about that talent and, using you as an example, how do we create more wishes?
You got to enable these people, man. Like, there's a lot of good talent out there. They just don't get their shot, right? I'll tell you like a very quick story is that, this girl,
nothing's ever quick with you.
Yeah, that's true. That's story time. So she's a CS major out of University of Calgary, working at a large oil and gas company. She was tasked with, a really cool cutting edge project. And it probably, if she would have solved it, it probably would have saved the company $10 to $20 million, right? And so she had a sandbox environment, and she was experimenting in there. She couldn't get access to, OpenAI's ChatGPT to do some coding. So she raised a ticket inside the organization and said, hey, so IT came knocking. And IT was like, oh, what are you doing over here? Oh, you're using ChatGPT, or you're using this. Okay, yeah, we'll help you. Within three or 4 hours, she was locked out of her account. An investigation was done on her. Because she was using she was requesting a corporate ChatGPT license. Mm-hmm. And she was so checked out, she has a master's in computer science, that, she left. She went to Austin, where I'm, based out of. And so if you want to create many wishes, like, you got to enable these people and not treat them like that, right? And I know so many of those stories. It's like people in these large enterprises, and I'm being very candid and frank, is like they want control of the AI narrative. And as a result, the hands-on keyboarders, the unicorns, those people who can actually do cool stuff, they don't get their shot. And that's why they leave.
And that's just completely different in the States, eh?
Completely.
Wish, wrapping things up here, what's the future headline that you want to read?
That we're building shit in this country and in the US, like lots of it.
How do we get that?
How do we get that?
Yeah.
You really want another story?
No, make it 30 seconds, bro.
How do we get that? I think we just remove all the red tape. Start building it, and US and Canada. We got molecules, we got electrons, we got capital, we got talent. There's no reason why we shouldn't be building shit here.
Favorite emerging tech right now?
Quantum computing.
Advice you'd give your 25-year-old self?
Enjoy life.
If people remember one thing from this conversation, what should it be?
Deliver.
Future Summit 2025 is coming up. Why should they be there?
They're going to learn a lot from a very, very smart set of people who have actually built shit.
Anything you want to plug?
You? Later,
My
guys.
guy. Wish, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us on the Built for the Future podcast. Looking forward to having you again soon and seeing everything you do.
Yeah, man. Keep doing you. You're doing some good stuff for this community.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.